Hello, and thank you for joining me at Spooky Reviews. I'm the Ghostess, and I am a gigantic horror movie nerd. Like the kind of horror movie nerd who spent the last 2.5 years watching a different horror movie every single day. Like over 1,000 movies from every single genre and subgenre of horror under the sun. I rewatched all of my personal favorites, gave some mid tier memories a second glance, and even discovered some gold along the way. I didn't just watch them either. I also tracked all of their stats in a spreadsheet of my own design in order to ultimately score them in 13 different qualities that I believe makes a horror movie great. And I've finally decided to do something with that data so that my life is not a complete waste of time. Before I began with this project, I had to ask myself the question, what truly makes a horror movie? To be considered a movie, it had to pass three qualifications. It had to be over 55 minutes in length. It had to tell a story. A series of free-form anthologies are fine, but there needed to be a narrative structure. It couldn't just be a long-form music video. And it actually had to be released somewhere. Into theaters, made for TV, streaming sites, Redbox, I don't care, as long as it wasn't just your friends uploading it onto YouTube. Figuring out what counts as horror is a little more difficult. It really varies person to person. I have some legitimate movie nerd friends who will say things like, Hereditary isn't horror, it's psychological drama with supernatural elements. Even had a movie nerd friend once tell me that 28 Days Later is a road film. When people say stuff like that, what I hear is them saying that horror is a garbage genre and they refuse to give it legitimacy. And that really isn't fair. Horror films have been around as long as films have been around. And genres, like any socially made label, evolved over time. If you look back to classical Greek theater, the reason we have a comedy and a tragedy mask is that those were the main categories that you could tell a story in. Comedy was where the heroes survived, and a tragedy was where the heroes died. But over time, we needed more terms to express the different sorts of stories we were telling. Comedy and tragedy are now really more associated with the emotion they provoke in the audience. Comedy being it makes you laugh, and tragedy being it makes you cry. But we also have a lot of genres that are defined more by their content. Like an action movie is going to have action sequences in it. It might be explosions, might be gunfights, might just be some martial arts, but there has to be action. For a movie to be science fiction, it has to have some exploration of theoretical technological advancements or at least an intergalactic encounter. I find horror to be a particularly interesting genre because it perfectly blends being emotionally driven and content driven. We assume that a horror movie is going to try to scare us, that it's going to fill us with fear, maybe even disgust. And we also assume that there's going to be some sort of exploration of death, either in more of a psychological way, like with slashers full of gore, or in a more supernatural way, like ghosts, goblins, and demons. To be considered a horror movie for my purposes, it had to clearly be trying to scare me, while also exploring some sort of psychological or supernatural phenomenon. I ranked every single movie I watched on a scale of 0 to 13 based on 13 different qualities. Some of those were more subjective, like did I find the movie interesting, entertaining, recommendable? Some of them were more technical aspects, like were they creative, believable, and well made. The rest were more about what makes a horror movie horror. Were they frightening, shocking, haunting, creepy, eerie, or just plain freaky? I've decided to do a countdown list of the 13 movies that best exemplify each of those horror qualities. I'm going to do my best to avoid spoilers and try to not have too many repeats. So some of the ones that got very high marks in multiple categories might just be making cameos in the honorable mention sections. And today I'll be starting with the 13 most frightening horror movies of all time. And when I'm talking frightening flicks, I don't just want to be startled. I'm going to expect the unexpected. Every scare well earned and every twist well thought out. I want the ones leaving me jumping out of my skin, that catch me off guard and leave me screaming at the screen. Whose genre shifts the swiftest, and whose plot twists make me want to shout. Let's begin our countdown with number 13. Wreck, 2007. Spanish found footage zombie thriller set within a city apartment building. It's a total must-watch. Its sequels aren't nearly as good, but after watching the original, you understand why people had to have more of this. There's also an American remake from 2008 called Quarantine, but I think the subtitles are worth it for the extra scares. It's a very short watch and does a lot with a little, and will not disappoint. Number 12. Shudder, 2004. It's a slow-burning ghost story mystery that unfolds in unexpected ways. They have a very creative use of photography that helps to enhance the tension and make some really cool jump scares. Not all of the special effects still hold up, but it's 10 times better than the American remake, which sent its white characters to Japan, despite the fact that the original movie came from Thailand. Anyway, rant over. You should go check this one out. Number 11. Cobweb, 2023. This movie totally caught me, and that is not an easy thing to do. The scares made me jump, and every twist I only saw coming just far enough ahead to go, "Oh no!" which is exactly what I want from a good mystery. The story was fully sold through a terrific manic, overprotective mom performance from Lizzie Kaplan, and an eerie atmosphere complete with a rotten pumpkin patch. It spun a scary story as smooth as silk, and I'm definitely heading back for seconds. Number 10. The Autopsy of Jane Doe, 2016. A father and son mortician team examine an unidentified corpse, slowly revealing an unsettling supernatural mystery. This little indie darling has quickly climbed up my list of personal favorites. Even though I know what's going to happen, it still makes me jump, and that's in no small part due to an excellent sound design. Plus, anything that stars Brian Cox is definitely knocking off my socks. And if you don't like it, kick rocks. Number 9. The Rental, 2020. This voyeuristic home invasion thriller will have you seriously reconsidering your next Airbnb. The feature-length directorial debut of Dave Franco has an uncomfortably plausible central concept and takes a lot of sharp turns that you don't see coming. The plot lays out a good foundation and unravels before ramping up at the end, and every single scare made me jump. If I can offer at least one spoiler that I don't think you'll be mad at, nothing happens to that adorable dog. Everybody else, you'll have to watch to find out. Number 8. Youre Next, 2013. When a wealthy family get-together is interrupted by masked home invaders, there's one guest they weren't counting on. This one is a delightfully twisted personal fave. It balances a mumble-gore, morbid sense of humor with some pretty emotional moments, and manages to tie it all together with some cool fights, creative kills, great gore, and one badass final girl for the ages. Number 7. The Orphanage, 2008. An exquisite Spanish drama that'll raise your hair, pull on your heartstrings, and then punch you right in the gut. You know when Guillermo del Toro is attaching his name to something, you're not going to be let down in the art department. But don't let all that eerie atmosphere fool you. This movie can jump scare with the best of them. It manages a couple of great twists and some sudden moves that'll slap you right across the face. My memory certainly won't be letting this one go anytime soon. Number 6. Satan's Slaves, 2017. Joko Anwar's masterful remake of the 1980s cult classic is really inventive and thoroughly captivating. It takes the original's plot and perfects the gore, the score, and the set design. Even though I've seen it a few times, there's always at least one twist that I'm like, oh right, I forgot about that, but it still all makes sense. You might need a Shudder account to check it out, but trust me, it is worth it. Number 5. Scream, 1996. Wes Craven's cleverly crafted whodunit slasher subverted its audience's expectations right from the trailer. By heavily featuring Drew Barrymore in the advertising and on the press tours, it seemed like her character would outlast the opening scene. So when she ended up sliced and diced, no one knew what to expect next, and the movie continued to deliver on that premise. While this movie has been quoted to death and its formula copied to death, and the franchise, unfortunately in my heart, sequeled to death, it still surpasses everything it eventually inspired. It's a well-thought-out mystery that revitalized the slasher genre, and while its self-aware, self-deprecating humor has grown into its own cliché, it still shows great love to the horror that came before it. Number 4. The Descent, 2005. I honestly wish I had never seen the trailer for this movie before watching it. Because while at first I'm thinking it's just a story about thrill-seeking friends on a cave exploration gone wrong, battling claustrophobia and encountering a collapse that forces them to battle natural nightmares and their own imaginations, this movie has the gall to hit us with subterranean humanoids at the halfway mark and amps everything up to 11. None of the characters feel like throwaways, and I am fully invested from start to finish. It's a nearly perfect horror thriller, only done a little dirty by its terrible sequel, but I'm perfectly fine forgetting that's canon. It kicks as much ass as it delivers good scares, which all adds up to an action-packed thrill ride that'll have you jumping out of your seat. Number 3. The Others, 2001. This gothic-inspired horror story has so many spooky little tricks up its sleeve. It's worth watching multiple times just to see how every little thing fits together. The tension builds up nicely, with reveals on top of reveals, and a hauntingly beautiful performance from Nicole Kidman. Not only does this movie manage to twist and turn with the best of them, but so much of its atmosphere takes my breath away. Number 2. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Tobe Hooper's classic crazy killer cannibal family terrorizes trespassing travelers taking a Texas detour. This movie is absolutely low-budget brilliance. It famously only used like a gallon of blood and left the rest of it up to your imagination. It knows how to balance the silence with the screams and uses insane set dressing and manic energy to sell a realistic, almost snuff film quality. It's bloody beautiful and still shocks me every single time. And here are a few honorable mentions that didn't quite make the cut. And the number 1 pick is 28 Days Later, 2002. This movie is absolutely required viewing for anyone who wants to call themselves a horror movie fan. And hell, if you like action movies, you'd probably dig this one too. A rage virus infects London, testing the humanity of its survivors. This movie was such an instant classic, it became a staple to the genre, and shows like Walking Dead were paying it homage less than 10 years later. Cillian Murphy absolutely kills it, and a kick-ass soundtrack helps bring it to life. The budget may be low, but the rewards are so high. And if you haven't already seen it, I wouldn't put off watching it one more day. So those were, in my humble opinion, the 13 most frightening horror movies of all time. If I missed one of your favorites, please let me know in the comments, but also be sure to check out the rest of this series. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. Follow me at Spooky Ghostess on Twitter, and join me next time for another spooky review. Boo for now! You're already using your hands too much.